This is the question of the week. And again, if you wanted your questions answered, it doesn't have to be financial. It can be any topic. You can message us, DM us on Instagram at Mormos Forever, or you can also text us via our ministry phone number, 864-428-7131.
And some of you, while we're answering this question, maybe you're giving, maybe you're going to our website or whatever. After this question is over, I'm going to say a prayer for you and bless you too.
Yes. So the question of this week is what to do with a husband who is spiritually low. How can I help bring him up? And I'm going to let you answer that because you're the husband. So what do us women need to be doing?
I think so many women try to define what it means to have your husband be the spiritual head of the home. And a lot of women define it based on their own spiritual experiences and based on what they view as superiority in someone's Christian walk. Meaning someone who prays for hours on end, meaning a person who takes to the pulpit and starts to preach or, becomes heavily invested in ministries and that sort of thing. And a lot of women, that is their gift of intercession and to labor for hours in prayer. My wife's devotion in prayer and studying the word is different than mine. I have a unique relationship with God, and a lot of times women put this pressure on their husbands to have a relationship with God that looks like theirs. And that's where I would begin and say, release the pressure off of your husband. Yes, I think that you should come to the table with really thought-provoking, intriguing questions about the Bible. But you should never try to force your husband to mirror his relationship with God after yours or after anybody else that you admire in the church. Yeah. Maybe your husband is not called to traditional ministry. Maybe he's called to the marketplace. Maybe your husband is a strong, integrous man. I can tell you this. We have seen couples where the wife was serving at church, was doing all the quote-unquote right things, and the husband, everybody would assume that they were a weak believer. And then tragedy hits their marriage. And guess who is the one standing strong on their faith? And so you cannot always judge a book by its outward appearance, by its cover. And you cannot judge your husband based on a superficial metric that you have in your mind. Allow him to be free. Encourage him in the Lord. Give him gifts that would help to motivate this furtherance of a relationship with God, whether that be a book or, talking to him. I think coming with really thought-provoking and intriguing questions is good. But even if you are further along in your knowledge of the Bible than your husband, one of the things you have to bear in mind is that you should still approach him with a level of reverence. Whereas every time you bring up a topic, and we've seen this before, as it relates to the Bible, the moment he starts talking, you start correcting. And you start asserting your superiority in the knowledge that you have about the Bible. This is a huge mistake to make. It's not that you shouldn't express your knowledge to him, but you have to do so out of reverence for the positioning he has in the home. Just because you know more about the Bible doesn't mean you have more authority. Authority isn't given based on knowledge of the Bible and how many scriptures you've memorized. It's given based on God's design for marriage, number one, and it's given based on your integrity and whether or not the scriptures that you know you're actually living. Would you rather have a husband who can quote the Bible and who doesn't reflect those values outside of church time? Or would you rather a husband who knows very little scriptures to memory, but lives a very righteous, integrous life? Wouldn't you rather have the latter? Absolutely. And if you don't, you need to check yourself. But even when asking these intriguing questions to your husband, allow him to journey through and discover and experience what it means to have revelation for himself. And then come back and you can challenge him and say, have you considered? What do you think about this then? What about this scripture? But coming with an air of superiority or antagonizing him is never going to yield a stronger spiritual relationship between you and him. Never.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think too, just leading by example, oftentimes we have that expectation that a man has to be that, spiritual leader. So we can't go before him, and again, it's showing that respect to your spouse. But, if your spouse is either ashamed or is dealing with certain things in their life, maybe pray with your children, be vocal about it, not from a condescending way, but be the one to take charge at times and make him feel comfortable, pray for him. Maybe your prayer is just over him, to pray and say, God, help him, give him wisdom, just like the wisdom of Solomon, to help him overcome any mental hurdles or challenges, and bring people to him that's going to help him grow as a man. And that's another thing that we see. A lot of men are very much alone during this time, and it's so important for us to be connected to a community of believers, but also of strong men that can also expose maybe your husband to something that he didn't grow up with. Oftentimes, these men didn't grow up. Maybe they grew up in a good family house, but they didn't see a lot of the things that you're trying to get him to do. And that's hard to pull out of somebody that never had that exposure. But again, it's never from a place of, coming down on him, but it's encouraging him. And the best way to do it is oftentimes lead by example.
And a good example of what I was talking about in the differences between men and women, women don't understand, like, my husband is hunting all the time, or golfing, or fishing, or he's always wanting to do these things. Well, men are wild at heart. There's a book, maybe you should read it. It's called Wild at Heart. And it talks about this desire in men to experience adventure and challenges. And for every man, it may not be physical in that way, but certainly I know men specifically who find God when they go fishing, or literally when they're going hunting, sitting up in that little box and they're being quiet as a mouse, and there's nothing distracting them. They're just waiting for the right deer to cross the path, and they're hearing from God. Encourage your husband whenever he wants to do things that will enrich him. And, if he's going with buddies and that they're good influences, encourage him to go. That's how you'll see him grow spiritually as well. So that is our question of the day.